Hello out there in Nala land after a long summer hiatus. We return to the great Nala studio. We want to wish Mrs. Baumser Mazel Tov on her baby. We're all excited about this baby. And good to see you again out there in Nala land. Okay, we begin Parshat Ki Tavo. And first our summary of the Parsha. This year is Lili Nishmas Rachaleh Bas Chaim Tzia Shalom. And we look to Gan Eden. Our Kisava, the Parsha, the summary is the following. Moshe concludes the legal section of his discourse with an account of the ceremonies to be performed in the Promised Land, which involve the 7 species which Israel has been praised with, which are indigenous and special for the land of Israel. These were to be brought to the Kohen in the central sanctuary. The donor was then to recite a prayer of thanksgiving. It's really a confession, recalling how God has delivered his ancestors from Egypt and brought the new generation to the land flowing with milk and honey. And then the Meiser, which is the 10th of the crop of each third year and of the Shemitah cycle, was to be given to the poor. After this, the donor was to offer a prayer in which he declared that he had obeyed the commandment to set aside Meiser for the Levi, for the orphan, and for the widow, and he did not neglect any responsibilities which had been devolved upon him. Excuse me. Moshe and the elders instructed the people to observe several solemn ceremonies once they had crossed the Jordan River. First, they were to erect large stones on Mount Eval and clearly inscribe on them all the words of the law. Secondly, they were to build an altar of stones and sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings on it. The sacrificial meal which followed the latter was to be eaten in an atmosphere of rejoicing. And then comes thirdly, the acceptance of the law was to be ratified by the 12 tribes in the following manner. This is very important to remember because it's going to be pertinent to how we learn the Parsha. 6 tribes were to stand upon Har Gerizim, the Mount Gerizim, representing the blessings. And the other 6 tribes were to stand on Mount Eval, which signified the curse. The Leviim were to stand in the valley midway between the 2 mountains, and they were to pronounce curses upon those who committed the following sins, and blessing upon those who avoided these sins. What are these sins? They can be synopsized into idolatry, dishonoring one's parents, removing a neighbor's boundary line, misleading the blind, acting unjustly towards the stranger, orphan, and widow, behaving in an immoral fashion, murdering someone in secret, taking a bribe to give false testimony in a case involving capital punishment, failing to observe the commandments in general. All members of the 12 tribes were to respond to each curse and blessing with the refrain of Amen. Amen means, of course, we're ratifying the truth. And they would say, Amen, cursed be the person who does this. Amen, blessed be the person who doesn't do this. Amen. The people had frequently been warned of the consequences of disobeying God's laws. Now they're about to enter the land of Israel, the promised land. Moshe felt that it was his duty to place even greater emphasis upon the results of their future behavior and what it would bring and what it would evolve from. If the Bnei Israel observed God's commandments, they would receive numerous blessings. These would include prosperity from the fields, within their cities, abundant livestock, the subjugation of enemies, and supremacy over other nations. The alternative would lead to disaster. Disease, famine, and death would result. The land of the Israelites would be overrun by a cruel nation, Jews would be scattered throughout the world, and they would once again become slaves. And then Moshe is now going to give his third and his final discourse to the people. He appealed to them to remember that God was their Lord, who watched over them in Egypt during their wanderings in the wilderness, and the one who would continue to protect them in the future. That is our synopsis of the Parsha. This is taken from Lilmod Ulamed. And now we begin looking at the story. This is going to become more challenging as the last Parsha of Devarim, the story of Devarim. Even here with curses and blessings, can't exactly tell you there's a story here. So in our Parshat Ki Tavo, Moshe concludes the transmission. Excuse me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. Moshe concludes the transmission of the 613 mitzvot, and now this is the final section of Devarim, his farewell to the people. He places before them the blessings and the curses. The choice is yours. You can either be a blessed individual, you could be a cursed individual. In very broad strokes, and he depicts what will occur if they don't do as they're told to do. For the very second time, the first time was in Parshas Bechukosai. At the end of Vayikra, we have the Tochacha, the curse, the consequence for those who don't obey the Torah. And those of you privy to the disastrous situations in Jewish history, more than not, they corroborate what the Torah says. It's not like this freak thing from history. This is all told